The Great Homecoming, an analysis of Zimbabwe's collective awakening, the wearing off of diaspora anesthesia, and the reckoning of an avoidant society. I've been thinking about this. The anesthesia of flight. So we are seeking to understand displacement, not merely as an economic migration, but displacement as a mechanism for avoiding a complex national pain. So displacement itself serves a function. It's not something that's just happening, right? So we're going to discuss the anesthetizing of the truth. How for over 20 years, fleeing from Zimbabwe was considered as the ultimate triumph. The minute you leave the borders of Zimbabwe and you start living in Johannesburg, in Gaborone, in London, in America, you really have made it. That is the ultimate triumph. All of these places act as an emotional painkiller, a literal anesthesia that dulls the trauma of your crumbling homeland of Zimbabwe. So by immersing themselves in foreign labor and daily survival struggles, millions of Zimbabweans successfully avoided facing the deep pain and the systemic decay of the society that they left behind. So we have learned to export the friction by sending our brightest minds and the most energetic youth abroad. Zimbabwe has successfully exported its civic frustration. Instead of staying to confront systemic anomalies, we channeled that immense energy into adapting to abusive and exploitative situations in foreign lands. We see how our people within the diaspora, and I know this because I lived in the United Kingdom, I lived in London for quite a considerable amount of time. So I have an understanding of how life in the diaspora is. You know, oftentimes the distraction itself can be viewed as survival. You face a series of perpetual crises, from passport issues, visa renewal cycles, xenophobia. These constant survival states can serve as a psychological shield, which allows people in the diaspora to stay too busy to look back and ask, who am I becoming? They never really get the chance to even ask such deep questions because they're too caught up in the survival. That's part of that avoidant society I'm talking about, where you have people hiding who they are. They hide their own history. You won't believe it. I have met scores of Zimbabweans abroad who lie. They claim that they are from Zambia or South Africa. And this is not lying for some type of practical reason. It is just that profound subconscious attempt to sever ties with a home that they feel too hopeless to repair. That is diaspora dissociation. They've learned to disassociate with the fact that they are Zimbabwean. But you see, we're getting to a time in the world where the drug, the anesthesia of flight is wearing off. And we see this because, for example, in South Africa, the policy changes are seriously affecting the people on the ground. The global immigration architectures are tightening. So the shelter of avoidance is beginning to collapse. That's falling apart now. The people are getting expelled from comfort. There's eviction notices out, particularly in South Africa, because those ZEPs, the Zimbabwe exemption permits, are expiring. There's also rising ground level hostility from the locals in South Africa. And there's just stricter immigration stances across Europe. And they are all acting as a sudden rude awakening on our people. So the anesthesia is wearing off. Returning home is transitioning from a distant, nostalgic dream that you have whilst you're on a bus to work in the middle of London to an abrupt, inescapable reality. We're forced to look at the dry soil that we abandoned. It's time to go back home, baby. So what has happened while we were looking away, while we were out there in the diaspora, distracted by work and all these pressures of every day, the racism, tough working conditions in some of the places, and so on. In 2013, we actually adopted a new constitution, and this constitution offered a very progressive path. A lot of people have lauded the 2013 constitution, and it offered very strong civic rights. The Chapter 4 rights, the Declaration of Rights, was very, very, very powerful, changed the position of the individual within our society. So we know in 2021, Amendment number 2 was passed. This showed the first signs of consolidated executive legal power. The judiciary caved in to the executive. Then in February 2026, we've got CAB 3. This is when it was introduced. And this was going to, or has been restructuring state authority. That's the higher level now. And just this month, July 2026, President Mnangagwa has signed CAB 3, fundamentally changing electoral frameworks in our beautiful country. So CAB 3 has been a shock, and returning Zimbabweans are facing a heavily altered state. For anybody who understands what an altered state of consciousness is, you would understand that when you are in an altered state of consciousness, you don't really know who you are. You don't know what you are. You don't know when you are. You don't know nothing about anything except the fact that you are conscious and things are happening which you do not fully understand and which seem so far divorced from what you would accept in your normal state, right? So under CAB 3, direct popular election of the president is replaced with election by a joint sitting parliament. So the parliament now votes the president in. Ain't that it? I'm not going to say it. So basically, the chickens have come home to roost. By avoiding civic duty at home, the foundational power of the vote has shifted because we avoided civic duty at home. We avoided all of that when we were running off into these different countries. And now, as the people are now being forced back, not only from South Africa, but also from other countries. It's tightening, like I said. So everybody now is being forced to come back to the shock of cab 3. You understand what I'm saying? That's why I said the chickens have come home to roost. It's almost like as these people are coming back home from these different countries, being forced to come back home, and this is going to continue, by the way, as we proceed into the future. We ourselves as individuals in this country are being forced to self-introspect. We are also experiencing a coming home of sorts. Even within ourselves, we have to come back to redrawing the board. We've got no choice. So we have to think about reclaiming our identity, because ultimately that's what we have. So that means moving past the shame of our history. And when I talk about the shame of our history, I'm just talking about what is real. I know people always say, oh, I'm proud of Zimbabwe and I'm proud of this, but your actions don't show us that you are proud of being Zimbabwean, right? So that's why I'm insisting that we have to move past the shame of our country. We must strip off the convenient aliases of Zambia or South Africa and declare ourselves fully Zimbabwean once again. We got to face the pain. We have to end that internal projection that survival elsewhere is victory. We have to confront the infrastructural, economic, and political reality of Harare and Bulawayo, Kwekwe, Masvingo, Mutare, as it is. We have to face what's real, right? We have to be agents for the future, accepting that no one is coming to save us. So we have to decide individually and collectively what it means to be a modern Zimbabwean under a highly consolidated system. That's our reality. I often talk about rebuilding from the ground up because that is what I believe in. That is what my training has taught me. We must bridge the mental divide between those who stayed at home and lived through the harsh daily realities of Zimbabwe and the returnees who are just waking up. We have to be a bridge between those two groups of people. And we are capable of that. House of Hunger represents a bridge. I represent a bridge because I have been among those who lived through the harsh daily realities of Zimbabwe, and I have been amongst the returnees, those who are just waking up to what's going on here because they haven't been here in a while and they're coming here and everything has changed. We have to be the bridge. That's our job. We have to acknowledge the gap. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge the gap. Like as it is, a lot of people are thinking, oh, these guys coming from South Africa, you know, they're going to be robbing us, or they're going to kill us, they're going to do this and that, right? There's a lot of suspicion about each other. And we joke about these things, but it's not funny. So to avoid another cab 3 style consolidation, Zimbabweans must occupy local civic spaces because they're there for you to occupy. You have to involve yourself in business forums and legal frameworks instead of retreating back into mental isolation, going into the drug dens, getting high. There's no space for that at this particular time. So you can't go into mental isolation because that's not going to help you. That's not going to help the people. So we have to find strength also in regional alliances, because now that you've been out there, when you were out in South Africa, you met South Africans, you met Nigerians, you met people from all over Africa. Take advantage of the alliances that you have formed. And if you have not, hey, you got to reach out to those people. Connect with others also who are in the diaspora and form local partnerships and self-sustaining community structures to build resilience. This is what needs to be done on a practical level. So we don't just talk, we offer the solutions. So yes, it's a crisis, but it's also a deeply personal invitation to face who you are. We all have to face who we are. That's why I called this the great homecoming. It's a time for healing. Even for those who've been here the whole while, you must come back into yourself, into remembering who you are, and see also how, even though you did not flee, but even you yourself have also escaped reality in some shape or form. You have avoided facing what has become of your nation. You have pretended that everything was okay because you couldn't deal with the full weight of what it is that was happening to your people. But because now, as I said, the chickens have come home to roost, we have to face reality. There's nowhere to run. The mirror has been held up against us and we are looking into it. I want you to see yourself as beautiful. See past all the things that have made you feel like you are less than who you are. Pierce through all of that and see just how beautiful you are. I want you to see what I see in you. Until next time.